Welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
That's us. We're the Classic Gaming Brothers. And Seth, it is 30 episodes.
That's right. 30.
Do.
I never thought we would be able to make it.
Me neither. I thought we'd give up after like episode 5.
Yeah. Me too. But so yeah, that's 30 true episodes.
That's right.
31 including the episode 0, and then we got a couple indie dev lounge episodes, so we're like 34 we're almost at like 34 recordings or something like that.
And we have the lost episode.
And there's the lost episode, which is gone
forever.
So but we've got about 30 plus hours of content recorded, which is great.
Pretty dang good, if I do say so myself.
Yeah. So I wanted to do some retrospection, I guess, in regards to our podcast, where we've been, where we're going. The first ever episode that we did, our episode 0, Zach and I filmed in person together.
Yeah.
And then every episode post that episode, we film remotely.
Record.
Record remotely.
Yes. We're not filming.
There's only audio when we stream, or only video when we stream. There's always audio. We record remotely. And we've tried different methods of recording remotely, and I think the method that we currently do is probably the one that we are going to be, which is the one we've been doing for a majority of our podcasts, is that we both record an individual audio track and then Zach mixes them together. In the event that you are curious about the stuff that goes on behind the scenes of this podcast, and if you are interested in doing a podcast and you want to figure out what that's like after doing 30 weeks of podcasting, let us know. We'll be more than happy to help establish, at least help you on the back end of stuff. And of course, we're always interested on having like a podcast network and being involved in that and promoting other creators and being able to promote ourselves. It's like a win-win situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, episode 30, you get a little bit of a podcast in the beginning of the show, and move right into our standard affair with recently been playing.
Yeah, Seth, do you want to talk about what you've recently been playing?
Sure. I love hearing the sound of my own voice, so I'm going to go first. So recently I've been playing a game called Evil Genius. It was developed and released in 2004 by a company called Elixir Studios and published by Vivendi. Both of these companies are now defunct. Elixir closed up, I think, based on performance issues. I'm not exactly sure. Vivendi was dissolved when Blizzard and Activision merged together. Vivendi's was one of the many properties that one of those companies had, and they decided to dissolve it when they merged. But the intellectual property was picked up by a company called Rebellion, which has made the Sniper Elite games, and they've also picked up a bunch of other intellectual properties. They actually, in fact, have the intellectual property for Moonbase Commander by Humongous
cool.
Entertainment, which we just talked about in the previous episode. They announced in 2017 that they actually were developing a sequel to Evil Genius.
Cool.
It's called Evil Genius 2 World Domination. And in 2019, they were in the E3 of 2019, so last year's E3, they premiered the first trailer for the sequel. And then they stated that the game would come out sometime in 2020, so sometime this year.
Cool.
So with that announcement, I decided that I was going to be like, go back and play it, because I actually hadn't beaten it. So Evil Genius is a management game set in the 1960s to 70s. Very spy-themed. I actually think more like Austin Powers versus James Bond.
Okay.
And very much stylized in that type of over-the-top Austin Powers, that 70s deco type feel. The way they're dressed, the way that the color palette that's used in the game, it's all very bright. You can play as 3 different supervillains. There's a Cruella de Vil type evil villain. There's like a evil Asian inspired type villain, like the evil crime lord, and then like Dr. No type style villain, very like short, bald kind of
Yeah.
You build your base, and then there's different regions of the world, and you're trying to resource manage and build up dollars and take over the world is what you're trying to do. And you have like a little island that you build your base in, and you build different rooms, and all of the minions that you control they do things based on direction.
Okay.
Versus direct control. The only people you can directly control are your evil genius and your direct henchmen versus your minions. So you'll have like minions, and like the base minion will be like just like guys in yellow jumpsuits, and then they kind of evolve, and they all evolve into different like paths. They can either go up the science path, the military path, or the it's like the social path.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do different jobs based on their different paths. And there's some jobs that all minions do, but then there's some jobs that only certain tiers do. So science people research, military people are better at defending your base, and the social people can staff your hotel, because you can have a hotel to kind of bring people away from your evil base, because there's plenty of people on the island, like tourists and stuff. And so it's a fun type of just a fun management style type game, and I've been really enjoying getting back playing it again. It's been like 16 years since I I've played it on and off, but I've been really trying really hard. It's a tough game. It kind of has a steeper learning curve. The game was criticized for its pacing, where the game could take a little while to get going. Then you've just got so much things going on, but it takes you a little while to get there. But so, what about you? What have you been recently been playing?
Well, I've recently been playing a very different game. I've recently been playing Apex Legends, which is a 2019 game developed by Respawn Entertainment and has been published and distributed through Electronic Arts. It is a battle royale style game, similar in vein to your Fortnites, your PUBG games of that nature. The difference between PUBG and Fortnite and Apex Legends is that Apex Legends is entirely a first-person shooter and also set in the same universe as Titanfall. It's set in the same kind of sci-fi universe as Titanfall, so there's a lot of references to things that happened in Titanfall in the lore of Apex. I got into it a bit when the game first came out, and then I kind of fell off of it, and now I've gotten a little bit back into it, not really for any particular reason, just me and my friends have been playing a bit more. Another thing that Apex does that at least I think is different than how Fortnite and PUBG handle the Battle Royale situation is that, kind of like Overwatch, it's very legend-centric. So all the characters that you play as are these quote-unquote legends who have their own personality and have their own abilities that are unique to them. So the one legend that I was playing as a majority of is a guy named Gibraltar, who is this kind of big buff guy who's decked out in shields, and he's a defensive type. So
Yeah, I have a good story about him when you're done.
Yeah, so he could generate shields and stuff like that. He has an arm shield that he pulls up. He's a cool character to play as, so I was mostly playing as Gibraltar during my last time. And so far, I've just been enjoying it. I'm not very good at Battle Royale games, but my friends and I did get to second place during one of our most recent playthroughs, and I managed to get at least 2 kills, which is amazing for me in those games. So so far, it's been fun.
Gibraltar also has an ability to call down an airstrike.
Yes.
So when I originally was playing Apex Legends, I played the Gibraltar as my first character, and we were at a little town that had a bunch of little buildings, and one of my friends, I was playing actually with 2 Ryans at the time, and one of the Ryans decided to leave a bunch of gas traps. We survived together, Ryan. He's put a bunch of gas traps down, and Dying Light Ryan, I forgot what he was doing, but he was, I think, setting some other type of traps, because we were going to get attacked. We knew people were coming to this little town. I was on top of the roof, ready to throw my airstrike at the enemies, but I got attacked. So I did what any person with a shield would do, and I put my shield up.
Yes.
So no one told me I couldn't shoot through my own shield.
Oh.
So I saw the enemy through my shield, and I said, I will call in the airstrike.
Oh, no.
So I shot the enemy with my airstrike ability, and it instead bounced off the inside of my shield and went down into the mined trap base.
Yep.
And I airstriked our own traps, making all the traps go off and killing everybody.
Good.
On our team. It was bad. And that was my experience playing Apex Legends.
Nice.
It's an enjoyable battle royale. Like if you're into like a battle royale type style game, that Apex, even COD and PUBG are all pretty good games if you're looking for that type of and Fortnite style type games.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy it. I don't play a ton again of battle royale games, but I was having fun with Apex. I like kind of the quick player movements that you can have. I mean, it's very much similar to Titanfall in that regards. I mean, you can do slides, you can do, I think, wall runs, you can, grapple or shoot off grappling hooks and stuff like that. Some of the characters can. It's a lot more fast-paced than some other battle royales that I've played, and that kind of lent it to be a bit more of a fun time for me, though it gets to be very hectic when you get into those final moments and everyone's kind of in one little section. But yeah, so that's what I've been playing, and I think it's actually a nice little segue into our topic for today, because while Apex Legends and Fortnite and those games aren't necessarily in this topic, I would say they're kind of a late offshoot of this type of topic. Yeah. The topic that we're talking about today is MMORPGs.
Yes, and as our father said when we interviewed him, what is an MMORPG? So
yes, what is an MMORPG? Well, Seth, do you want to take it away on the name and maybe some memories?
Sure. So MMORPG stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. It is generally a game that's hosted on a server by a company, and many players can log into the same server and share a similar gameplay experience, and they can work together to solve issues and team up or fight each other in PvP or player versus player, and generally explore this world, performing quests or adventures for the non-player characters in the world throughout, and explore it together as a large group. These servers, or sometimes known as shards, could have thousands of players on at any given time, and some of the games would have multiple servers and shards that you can join because their population was so large that you'd be able to even perhaps, I think tens of thousands, I think is probably the servers were also limited based on the load on who could, how many people could be at a time. And depending on also the time in the year, like if early 90s MMOs and 2000 MMOs had different bandwidth, as it were. But generally it's a shared experience. I've actually throughout my life have played a decent amount of MMOs and have memories of all of them, as my memories are still intact. I think probably one of my farthest reaching MMO would probably be playing some type of MUD, which is a multi-user dungeon, which is text-based style, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about MUDs as well, so I can go into those specific memories later. And then for graphical MMORPGs, I did spend time playing World of Warcraft. It was probably one of the more, going into some of the locations in World of Warcraft was truly awe-inspiring during that time. Around 2004, 2005, and some of the locations were it was just like almost like playing like a Lord of the Rings type game, which, I mean, it was a fantasy game, and there was also a Lord of the Rings game that came out eventually as well, but it was just cool kind of experiencing that type of fantasy. And I was always a big Dungeons and Dragons player, so a fantasy multiplayer game was a lot of fun. I played that. I played for our World of Warcraft players who are listening, I played it up to around the first expansion, and then I stopped, and then I would play every so often when the expansion's released, and I probably haven't played it in a long time. It's probably been at least 5 years since I've played any World of Warcraft, but I played it on launch, and it was it was an experience. It was a good experience. Also, City of Heroes, City of Villains is probably the MMO that I played the most. That was a superhero themed MMORPG, and they actually do have some private servers. It was sunset back in the day, so yeah. The company ended up closing up all the servers. There is a private server, a few private servers out there that replicate the game itself, and you can go in and play and rebuild your old character, and that's fun in more of a community sense. I had a better community experience with the City of Heroes and City of Villains franchise than I did with World of Warcraft. And then I still do play some Star Wars The Old Republic, which is the new BioWare Star Wars game, and newer, I guess, comparatively to like Star Wars Galaxies. And that game, it's just a really good story. It's like a BioWare single player game, and I did play that, and there was a period of time where I was playing that with a lot of my friends as well. Definitely MMOs work better with a community since they're kind of driven based on having massive multiplayers playing it. So the more friends that you can have playing the game, whether you meet them through the game or whether you meet them in real life and convince them to play the game, is important to the game.
Right.
So yeah. So what about you, Zachary? What have your memories?
Well, so I have kind of a distinct early memory of MMOs, and then I have kind of later memories of MMOs. My early memories of MMOs come in the form of RuneScape, which was a massively multiplayer online game. It was free. It still is pretty much free. I think it's free to play up to a certain level. Back in the day when I was first playing it, it was pretty much completely free. It came out in 2001, and at that time I was in elementary school, and we had computer time, where we would go into the computer lab for usually about, I think it was like an hour or so. And I think we were supposed to be doing something, but our teachers kind of just let us run amok in the sense that was where I discovered things like Newgrounds and Miniclip, which were two fairly popular Flash websites at the time that had a lot of Flash games and Flash movies. Probably playing games that were not appropriate for the Christian school that I was attending. But one of the games that we got introduced to right around the time where I think our teacher said, well, you can't go on Newgrounds anymore, was this game called RuneScape, which me and a few other friends of mine all signed up for. We created our characters. RuneScape was this kind of 3D world that you could wander around in, and you could fight monsters, other players if you wanted to. You could mine for gold. There were stores that you could go into where you can buy new weapons and such. I remember I would go back home, and we had two computers. We had a computer that I would use downstairs, which was I think ours was our old Windows 95 or 98 computer that was not connected to the internet. But then we had your computer, which was upstairs, that was connected to the internet. And sometimes when you would let me go on that, I would play RuneScape, and I used to call up one of my friends on the telephone because we had the ability to do that at that point. And I would be on RuneScape talking to him on the telephone and trying to figure out where he was, because I was really too young to understand how audio chat worked at that time. Nor was I likely allowed to have an audio chat account.
Right, and audio chat was in its own world back then too.
Yeah, it was in its own kind of infancy back then, and I wasn't certainly privy to it, but me and my friends would kind of just sit on the phone, hogging up the phone line while we tried to find each other on servers in RuneScape, which was always a good time. Mostly revolved around me dying a lot. From either random villains or monsters. A little bit later in high school, me and one of my good friends, actually our artist for the podcast, Tian Long, we got into playing free-to-play MMOs, and that kind of continued into college. Basically what we did was we would kind of find an MMO of the week, I guess you could say, and we would download it and we would play it for a few hours, maybe a couple times a night, and then we would kind of stop and then switch to the next one. And we did that for a bunch of them. We did that for Neverwinter in its kind of early days. We did that for Star Trek Online. We did that for EverQuest, the more recent version of EverQuest. We did that for ESO. We really tried to get kind of a broad experience into some of these online MMOs just to goof around in them. A lot of times we'd get into weird situations with other players, or we would find that the game that we were playing might have been broken for us at the time or something, and weird glitches and such would happen. So we would record ourselves and share the videos with our friends.
Yeah, so that's some good memories of MMORPGs. I remember having my computer that only I could use except for you when I wasn't home, I guess. As I alluded to, MMORPGs originated from MUDs, which were multi-user dungeons that were text-based and were very similar to Zork, except you could have multiple people playing them. Do you want to go through and talk a little bit about MUDs?
So, as Seth was saying, some of these earliest massively multiplayer games were these multi-user dungeons, and specifically the first multi-user dungeon was a game called Multi-User Dungeon, also known as just MUD. And its name derived from the fact that it was a multiplayer tribute to another game called Dungeon, which itself was a variant of Zork. Dungeon was a version of Zork that was written for kind of different computers at the time, and a fan of it, a guy named Roy Trubshaw, who was attending Essex University, really liked playing Dungeon, and he thought, I want to play it with friends. So he began and started running the MUD. And MUD actually became the first real game to essentially become this massive multiplayer online game, because in the 1980s, while it was running, Essex University got connected to the ARPANET, which was the precursor to the internet. So now other people outside of Essex University were able to get into MUD and play it. So that's kind of how MUD began to kind of spread out throughout the world. And MUD lasted from 1978 until 1987. And during this time, it kind of started to see imitators come out, which just began to be just known as MUDs. And MUDs began to grow in popularity, especially over here in the United States in the 1980s, when personal computers were just getting cheaper and cheaper and capable of handling higher baud rates, which is the rate of transfer between a modem and a network. MUDs were, again, all text-based, so usually the faster the computer could handle, usually the more enjoyable, because the text would come in at a faster rate. And that's just kind of how they started out. And there's hundreds of MUDs to speak of. And MUDs kind of got their real breakthrough through things called bulletin board systems, or BBSs. And bulletin board systems were ways people could communicate with each other prior to the advent of the World Wide Web. These were, I think, the best way to describe a bulletin board system. They're like forums that you not only had to know the secret password to get to, being the phone number to dial into, but also you had to create your accounts for, which is, again, a lot like traditional forums, but they were all mostly text-based. Sometimes they would have images done in ANSI graphics, which were kind of these colorful text-based graphics that the computer could generate, which weren't like real.
Oh, kind of like
sprites.
if you like a 4chan type deal. Sometimes 4chan will make ANSI graphics, or
and not as volatile as 4chan though.
Yeah, that's true. Some of them might be.
Yeah. Well, classic BBSs traditionally were just ways for people to communicate, and there were hundreds of them out there. But one thing that a lot of them had were these things called door games. And door games was a section of the BBS that you could log into to access games that would be transmitted to your computer so you can play. And a good chunk of these were MUDs, because MUDs were very easy to assemble, and they were very easy to hold in terms of space on these early servers. So you could log into a BBS that was hosting a MUD, log into the MUD through the BBS, and away you go into this fantasy adventure. And a lot of them were fantasies. They There's a whole bunch of MUDs I think one called God Wars. There was, again, the original multi-user dungeon. Dragon's Gate, I believe, was another one.
I played in Kid Mud, which was also still like a fantasy driven MUD.
Avalon, The Legend Lives was an early one from 1989. Again, these were all text-based games, but they all had a fantasy setting, and they allowed users to interact with each other. Some later MUDs started to develop very, very simple graphical elements, and a lot of times the graphics were composed of text characters using ASCII or ANSI artwork. So it wasn't, again, I wouldn't really describe them as graphical MMOs, but they did have some graphical elements in the later years so that you could view a map, for example, which would generate through text characters on the screen.
So then in 1991, our friends actually at SSI that we recently chatted about in a previous episode released a game called Neverwinter Nights, which is not to be confused with Neverwinter, which just came out recently-ish. Neverwinter came out in 2013. Neverwinter, or the other PC game called Neverwinter Nights, not to be confused with that.
Right, yeah.
1991 Neverwinter Nights was the first graphical MMORPG ever, and it went live on AOL for PC owners and was on from 1991 to 1997. It was the first time that people could log in and play a massively multiplayer game that had role-playing elements to it, and what better system to use than a Dungeons and Dragons type system to bring people together in the Gold Box engine. And then in 1996, SSI released Dark Sun Online, which was a graphical MMORPG that had similar graphics as the Dark Sun games did. And then 1997, Ultima Online came on, and that featured isometric 3D graphics, which were different than the Gold Box graphics, which were a flat 2D, and the SSI the Dark Sun Online graphics that were 2D sprites as well. So Ultima Online was isometric third-person graphics, and the game was much more complex than the Neverwinter Nights game, the Dark Sun Online games, and any of the text-based MMOs. And I remember hearing stories. I personally didn't play a lot of Ultima Online, but it is, I believe, with Ultima Online, the start of like stories about the things that you can do in an MMORPG that you cannot do in another game. One of my friends had a story where he essentially was able to sell a boat to somebody on the dock, another player, and then pickpocket the boat from that player and just run and just essentially take the person's money, then take the boat and just run. It is also the MMORPG where the creator, Richard Garriott, who is pretty outlandish, he had his character, his personal character, Lord British, be murdered at an event that he was attending, and he put in a lot of different safeguards to prevent his murdering, but he had to be locked into place because of the way that the text was coming out or something of that nature, and somebody cast a spell that was like a firewall in that particular space, and he couldn't move, and it killed him. And he was very mad about that, and this it started bringing in, like, you would have people being game masters in Ultima Online, and they would be managing the game world, and they would be either volunteers or employees of the company, and they would have game master powers that would be able to additional powers that maybe they could punish players, because they wanted you to play even if you figured out exploits in their game. They just wanted you not to exploit it because they still wanted your monthly subscription. For a lot of these games that we're going to talk about, all have like a monthly subscription to them, and which nowadays they move to a free-to-play method where they charge for cosmetic items, but from the 90s into 2000, there was a monthly subscription for most of these games. And with the success of Ultima Online came EverQuest in 1999, which was a full 3D third-person adventure. And it eventually also paved the way for games such as Asheron's Call in 1999 and the beginning of the 2000 era of the massive surge of MMORPGs. So EverQuest was a game that we could probably talk about for its own entire episode. It was a fantasy-driven role-playing game where you would go and explore this world and design your own character and head out into the unknown reaches and do quests with people and level up your character. My experiences with it, I played a dwarf who left the town and got killed by a rat. And that was EverQuest. There is also now EverQuest 2. That's also a more up-to-date version. And I think that's the current version that's being played or supported. I think EverQuest 1 is still being supported too.
I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think EverQuest 1 is being still supported, but it's gone through a lot of updates, obviously, since 1999.
Yes. Asheron's Call was a game that came out in 1999, created by Turbine, who's now owned by Warner Brothers. Turbine was a game company that's actually based in Massachusetts, and they created Asheron's Call, which was another fantasy-type game similar to EverQuest. And I actually owned a copy of Asheron's Call. Did not know that it required a subscription when I purchased it. Also did not have... We had dial-up internet, so I never played Asheron's Call. I only owned it and never played it. But from my understanding of the game, it's a fantasy 3D game where you can explore the world as well, similar to EverQuest. I think it was more realistic fantasy, but I'm once again, I'm not 100% sure on that.
I never played Asheron's Call, and looking at pictures of it, I honestly can't tell if it's Asheron's Call or EverQuest that I'm looking at. So.
I mean, fantasy and MMORPGs really walk hand in hand.
100%.
So there were a series of massively multiplayer games that came out. To list a few, there was Dark Age of Camelot that came out in 2001, Zach's favorite of RuneScape in 2001, Ultima Online had a sequel that came out in 2001, Final Fantasy got into the game of massively multiplayer games and did Final Fantasy 11 in 2002, and then they also did Final Fantasy 14 at a later date. EVE Online, which was one of the first massively multiplayer games set in space and is an extremely complex game that requires spreadsheets to circumvent. There is a game called Second Life, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit, but it came out in 2003, and it's like a massively multiplayer game, but it's a little different. City of Heroes, City of Villains. City of Heroes came out in 2004, and then of course, the big dad, World of Warcraft in 2004. All these games came out in 2000. Many of these games are still operating either on the servers that they originally launched on or on private servers. So Second Life, out of all these games, Second Life it's kind of a virtual. It was more of like a virtual life simulator versus a massively multiplayer role-playing game. You weren't playing Second Life to do quests and level up your character and do raids with your friends and fight big monsters and gain XP and get items and loot and stuff like that, which is what all of the other games were pretty much about, was getting items, getting levels, and just getting to that top tier content. Second Life was about living a second life, and was about you could be anybody that you want in Second Life. You could fly in Second Life from the beginning of the game. But it's more than just a chat room. That's the thing. Like it is a 3D representation of a chat room, but it also is a lot more. And there are stories, because Second Life has a currency called Linden, which has a conversion rate to actual dollars, and people would buy and sell virtual property for physical dollars. And they would own nightclubs and charge rent in their Linden currency, which would then be converted into actual currency, and people actually became very wealthy playing Second Life. But it's a different type of MMORPG. I would still put it as a massively multiplayer online game. It's just not an RPG, is it? Well, yeah, it's
yeah. And Second Life is kind of unique in the sense that it has like everything involved in it. I mean, there are churches that have had full sermons and have locations within Second Life. There was a dedicated land that was purchased by an Islamic company in Egypt that allowed Muslims and non-Muslims to perform the ritual of the Hajj, which is a trip to the Kaaba in Mecca, so that they can make the pilgrimage if they're physically unable to. It also had embassies for real-world countries, like opened by the country. Specifically, the Maldives and Sweden had actual real embassies located in Second Life, which is wild. Like,
and MMORPGs and MMOs, because they have such a large player base, they tend to get people to do things, sometimes in acts of community. And some interesting things that I learned, for an example, kind of a little real, is they actually did studies on how a pandemic spreads based on World of Warcraft because of a blood plague that happened in World of Warcraft, and that it accidentally spread throughout the entire game. And scientists have used that as a study of how humans respond to actual pandemics. And another fun story in regards to like MMOs or like heartfelt stories. A heartfelt story would be there was an old Lord of the Rings online game in 2007 that came out. It still has a community and still has a following, done by the Turbine Company. They actually held a service for the actor Ian Holmes, who passed away recently. So they got together, who portrayed Bilbo. So they got together and they held a service. And it's a place where people, especially in a time that currently, during recording and production of this video, it's during the COVID crisis. But even during this time, MMOs can bring people together in a way that we can't. To be honest, we just can't get together. But you can get on your Lord of the Rings tune, as it were, as the terminology for your player or your avatar, and you can go to this this service and express your condolences to other people who are obviously fans of Lord of the Rings. The Turbine Company also created a game, Dungeons and Dragons Online, that came in 2006. And I played that game, and it was interesting because it was based on the Dungeons and Dragons out at the time, 3.5 version. And I was really bad at that game. I was telling Zach earlier that I played a thief who did not know how to pick any locks, and the game did not have any, it didn't have really good solo play, so I couldn't learn the game. I had to be part of a group, and all I knew how to do was tumble, and that was not helpful for the party. So there was a surge in 2000, partly because of the internet. And the internet moved away from dial-up to being either DSL or cable, where you could be connected to the internet and have high, fast download speeds pretty much all day long. And it's really the only way that these MMORPGs were able to survive and thrive was because you could have a cable internet and you could be connected all day, and it didn't cost you additional money to be online for 24 hours, hopefully playing their game is what they wanted.
The increase in popularity of MMOs between, from the 1980s to the 1990s and then this boom in the 2000s, it's definitely not it's not like a fluke, because if you look at how internet speeds were increasing at that time, it corresponds. As internet speeds got commercially faster and faster and more affordable, then you saw this massive rise in MMOs to when it became that peak kind of in the early 2000s.
And MMORPGs, I would say a majority of them have very similar UIs and very user interfaces and very similar type of gameplay. You have a class that you play that has a number of abilities. You target your enemy and you push a button on the keyboard and it activates the ability. The ability has a cooldown and you have to activate another ability. And then you'll have some level of mana, endurance, stamina, something that takes away to use it, and you have some health that if you get hit with the power, you get injured. It's pretty much how a majority of the many of the MMORPG mechanics work, including newer MMORPGs that have come out, such as Neverwinter in 2013, Elder Scrolls Online in 2014, and even big licensed games such as The Old Republic from Star Wars in 2011 and Star Trek Online in 2010. Though Elder Scrolls Online, does that have a click-based? Have you played that? Is that more of a hitbox?
From what I played, it plays more of like a lot like a click-based MMO, but with more of the controls from like your Elder Scrolls,
like Bethesda style,
Skyrim, Bethesda style gameplay. So it's like playing a Bethesda game just in an MMO.
So, but Neverwinter, The Old Republic, and Star Trek Online, all of the same. You get a class, you have buttons at the bottom of your screen, you target your enemies, you push your buttons. That's how the game goes. You fight progressively more difficult people as you go on. And there really has to be something that you either have to have an investment in the game, like you've had to play thousands of hours in an MMORPG to continue to want to really necessarily play it, or it has to have some type of hook to get you in to play it. Because by now, the people who have played MMORPGs are like me and have played a number of MMORPGs, and they have all very similar mechanics. Do I really want to play another fantasy game that's very similar to all of the fantasy games that are already out? Or do I want to just play one of the games that I'm more familiar with? And that's the kind of push-up that these companies are seeing. So they may do something like The Old Republic, where they write these crazy stories per every class, and it's like playing a single-player game for every single. You're essentially getting 8 single-player games for the price of one, and it's now free to play. Or you're banking on your intellectual property, like Neverwinter and Star Trek Online, where you're banking on just getting D&D players or Star Trek fans to play your game. So then we have a turn where there's now a new genre of MMORPGs that are like MMOFPS. And so now we're kind of entering, I would say, the era of looter shooters, as they're called, which include games such as Destiny, The Division, and Anthem, which have RPG elements but an FPS gameplay.
Right. Or at least in Division's sake, I think it's third-person shooter, but it still follows a lot of the mechanics of other looter shooters like Destiny and Anthem.
Right. Do you want to talk a little bit about looter shooters?
Yeah, so at least from my experience, I played some Destiny. I played some Destiny 2. I actually I have actively played Destiny 2. I like it. It's like Seth said, they are very much MMOs in the traditional sense. I mean, they're these massive games. They have plenty of players, and they have a lot of role-playing game elements, but they also have a kind of strong focus on their gameplay mechanic of being either third-person or first-person shooters. For Destiny's sake, for example, it has a very strong reliance on needing players to go on these raids, which, I mean, is very comparable to World of Warcraft and going on raids in World of Warcraft. But I think one of the differences is that the game doesn't necessarily fault you for playing alone, and also a good chunk of the gameplay it plays just like you're playing Halo, but with like a bunch of people randomly like spawning around you every now and then. I don't know if I'm doing it quite the justice of describing it, but a lot of looter shooters, as the name implies, also have kind of this reliance on always getting better loot. That's where you kind of get the loot box system that will be used, or for example, traditionally when you go on these raids in Destiny, your goal will usually result in getting high gear that is good potentially for the next raid. A better gun than the one you have. You're always up trading to the next available and better tool.
Which is a mechanic that stems all the way back to Ultima Online.
Oh yeah,
it's a mechanic that you play this game to get stuff and to level up. Like at the end of the day, the core mechanic is I want my character to get the coolest looking stuff and to be the highest level. And I will play this game and do whatever I need to do in the game to get to that point. And that is the MMORPGs. Do you have any final thoughts or anything?
I think the one thing that I think is very cool about MMOs is, as Seth was saying, a lot of these MMO games have a lot of the same gameplay mechanics. I mean, a lot of them have almost identical UI. I've seen photos that compare like 4 or 5 different MMOs from the early 2000s, and they all look virtually identical to each other. But the thing that I think makes MMOs so endearing to me, the thing I think that makes them so endearing to other people isn't the actual game. It's never been the actual game. It's the sense of community you get when you're playing these MMOs. If you go into World of Warcraft, you're playing with people who are interested in World of Warcraft and Warcraft lore and talking about Warcraft lore and exploring this lore and history with you. If you're playing Lord of the Rings online, it's that just with Tolkien. If you're playing Dungeons & Dragons online, it's that with D&D, and so on and so on. And it's this sense of community that you create with these people that are like-minded, and that's why these MMOs last the way they do. I mean, if you look at like EverQuest, it's been going on for 17, 16 years at this point. And it's because of that sense of community. What I think is interesting and kind of sad, I actually retweeted a picture of this, is images that people have taken screenshots from the final moments of MMOs. This one account that I follow on my normal Twitter, but I just retweeted it from our Twitter, so you should be able to see it, is 4 pictures from the final moments of Asheron's Call, Tricksters Online, The Matrix Online, and Star Wars Galaxies, in the final moment when their server gets shut down for good. And it's this I almost want to describe it as this kind of beautiful, nostalgic image of all these players standing in one area just saying goodbye to each other, and then the last message says, like failed to connect or connection lost. It's this really heartwarming image to see all these players gathered for one last time to just say goodbye to each other. It's like watching people graduate or something, or watch people like say goodbye to an old friend, and that's what some of these people are doing. Who knows if they reconnected. But it's that kind of thing I think appeals me to MMOs, is that sense of community.
Yeah, and that's actually I have a personal experience with being on a game that was sunsetted and being on the server when the sunset occurred. I was with City of Heroes and City of Villains. I was on City of Villains when the game got turned off, and I got disconnected after saying goodbye to people who I, to this day, haven't been able to reconnect. I still, if I get a private server of City of Heroes or City of Villains, I still add the person's global name because I still remember it, and to see if they're there, and to see if I can talk to the people that I've became friends with through the game and have no other way of contacting them outside the game. And it's a sad moment, but you'll not have better games if you continue to sit in older games.
Right.
So, or if those games don't evolve with the times. So either the game needs to evolve with the time, a newer game needs to come out, or you need to sunset the old product. And that's just kind of how things are. So with that, let's end on a happy note and talk about newer games coming out.
Yeah, exactly. Go from the melancholy to the
to the expectant and hope for the new. So Zach, how about you go first with the buy wait pass?
Yeah, I think my buy wait pass is also kind of fitting, at least with the early topic that we had for this first chunk of our little history of multiplayer games, and that's because my buy-weight pass is Buddy Simulator 1984.
What a great game.
Which Seth is aware of, and some of you might be, because we streamed Buddy Simulator 1984 in one of our streams not too long ago. It was actually as of the release of this episode last weekend. And the Buddy Simulator in 1984 is this very kind of quirky, I almost want to say it has horror elements to it, but it's not like a straight out horror game. I think it plays a little more on the psychological element of horror, where you are connecting to what appears to be bulletin board system in the year 1984 on a vintage computer. Looks in the pictures and stuff, it actually looks like an Apple II. I think it's its own kind of thing though in the lore. And you're communicating with your buddy, your virtual buddy, who you name and who you greet, and who actually knows your name without you having to tell him your name, which I think is a neat little trick they do with the game.
Like your actual name.
Yeah, like he will tell you, like when we were playing, he said, "Hi, Seth," and Seth never inputted his name into the game. It knew. And I'm curious how it's going to play with that kind of, I don't want to call it data mining, but that's what it is, with that data mining tool, because there are games that do that. I think one game that does that to a really interesting extent is Black and White. And I don't know if you remember this, Seth, but when you played Black and White and characters die, they will whisper names of the person who dies. And apparently the game data mines and will look for names that are saved in Word documents. So sometimes you'll hear people say, in Black and White, you'll hear your name said, or you might hear like a friend of yours name said or something like that, because it pulls names from text documents that are saved in Word documents that are saved in your computer. Going from that, I think Buddy Simulator has a lot to offer in terms of kind of what it can do with a little bit of psychological horror. I love the setting of a BBS. In fact, you play through what kind of looks like a version of Zork for the first chunk, and then it evolves into kind of an early graphical game. So I'm excited to see what it has to offer. It's due to be released in the summer of 2020, which is right now. So hopefully very, very soon. And I think it will be a buy for me.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a buy for me as well, and I think we're definitely going to stream it, possibly twice. Each of us can stream our own experience with it. So for my buy-weight pass, I'm going to go with a kind of different game in regards to what we've been talking about, and I'm actually going to change it up on Zach. I put a different game in my notes, so I'm going to actually talk about an entirely different game than what's in my notes. My buy-weight pass is going to be a game called Crusader Kings 3. So a company called Paradox Development Studio is actually one of my more favorite development studios. They control not only Crusader Kings as their intellectual property, but they also are working on the Vampire Bloodwines game, I believe, the new one that's coming out, Vampire Bloodwines 2. So they're creating Crusader Kings 3. It is a very slow game where you play as a person who has a dynasty. And the thing that's interesting about the Crusader King series is that the game follows your dynasty. So as long as you rule, you can continue to play the game through your dynasty order, through your family. But once the rule switches off your family, you lose. So you have to keep the crown, whatever that crown may be, in your family and continue to pass it through. So it could be very hard to play this game if you're a king, because it's very easy for a king to, through the years, have it be gone from that family. Because it doesn't matter if they're a direct descendant of you. It matters that they're part of your dynasty family, so they can remarry and you can screw up your whole lineage. And you could play as small as a baron, one little realm, and you have advisors, and you have to do diplomacy, and you have to marry people. You're trying to marry off your children to get allies. You can have war, you can take over places, but it's a kingdom simulator is what it's called, and very much a grand strategy experience. It is due to come out on September 1st of 2020, which is the first day of my birthday month.
Oh, maybe that gives me an idea.
That's good, because I'm going to put it down as a wait. So actually, it's gonna MSRP at $49.99. The Royal Edition will be MSRPing at $74.99. So I have Crusader Kings 2, and I have a lot of the expansion packs. They always have a lot of expansion packs. It tends to be one of those games where you're always buying expansion packs to get more content. So like they'll add the Pope, or they'll add some other family or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's good. It's fun. It is a long game. It is like sitting down to play a Civ game. So it does tend to take some time to it takes some. You have to have some time available to play the game, which is why I'm putting it down as a wait, because I don't always have the time to play long games like Crusader Kings or Civ. But it is a like, I'm just looking. I see that I have 17.8 hours on Crusader Kings 2. I'm pretty positive that's like 3 games, but I'm probably 3 bad games. I've started a lot of Crusader Kings games. So yeah, so that's that. It's gonna be a wait. Maybe Zach will buy it from him for my birthday. That'll be fun.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, so there's that. So that is the end of our 30th episode.
The big 3-0.
Big 3-0. So Zach, do you want to tell everybody about how they can contact us, support us, and listen to us?
So if you're looking to contact us, listen to us, or support us, I'm going to give you all the instructions that you need to have the desires to do those things fulfilled. So starting off with contacting us, there's plenty of ways you can contact us. You can do so by going into your email right at this moment, clicking new email, and in the to field, typing classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. And what you're going to do in the subject line is say, "Hi, brothers." And in the body paragraph, you're going to say, "Hello, brothers. My name is blank. I would like to be entered into the chance for a drawing of a free game. Here is my blah, 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 blah. Love, fan." If someone sends that exact message, you'll be entered into a drawing for a free game, I tell you. So that's one way that you can definitely reach out to us. You can also reach out to us by going to our website and going to the contact form on our website. While you're on our website, feel free to check out our store, and also just our front page. You can listen to some of our episodes right there. If you are interested in contacting us through social media, we have a Facebook that we maintain, Classic Gaming Brothers. We have an Instagram that we maintain, Classic Gaming Brothers. And we have a Twitter that we maintain that, due to unforeseen consequences, is CG Brothers Pod. So feel free to reach out to us on any of those methods. Seth will probably respond to you for the majority of them. I will likely respond to you on Twitter because I monitor that fairly regularly. Now, let's say you want to listen to us. You know, you're already doing that, but say you want to tell other people to listen to us, or maybe you're getting bored of the podcasting app that you're on. Well, good news is we're on a bunch of podcasting apps. We're on plenty of them. And I can name a few off the bat, but, you know, Seth always gives me heck for when I say one, because I'm like, "Oh, did you hear we're on this one?" And I can say it every single time. But it's true. We're on iTunes. We're on Apple. iTunes. We're on
Spotify,
Google
Podcasts. You said iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio. TuneIn.
Yeah, you name it, we got it. They got it. If for some reason there's a podcasting app out there we're not on, let's say you're listening to this on such and such podcasting app and you don't like it anymore, and you've just heard of a great new podcasting app that everyone's using, and it's the new hip thing to do, well, reach out to us and we'll try to get onto that podcasting app just for you. And that will be the truth right there. We'll do our best. You can also go to our website, as I mentioned, and listen to our episodes right there. They are embedded there through Podbean, and also you can go to our YouTube channel where we've been uploading all of our episodes, and also some of our Twitch streams. We've kind of been backlogging them onto our YouTube channel. Speaking of which, if you want to see what Seth and I look like, or you want to see just how good at video games we're not, then you can go to our Twitch, which is twitch.tv Classic Gaming Brothers. If you want to see what my side of the game looks like, sometimes when we're playing multiplayer games, I'll stream a bit, depending on how my internet's behaving. Go put a VS right before Classic Gaming Brothers, and look at that. You're right on my side. You can pull us up if you have two monitors. You'll put one up and one of the other, put one in the other, and, mute and unmute the audio. I don't know what you're doing there, but yeah, that's just some of the ways that you can listen to us and such. And if you want to support us, tell 3 friends. That's the best way to do it. Only 3. Don't tell any more. Because I think, as Seth said the last time, which I got a kick out of, was that if you like something, you tell 3 friends. If you don't like something, you tell more.
We only want you to tell 3.
I got that now. That's my that's going to be my life motto. I think that's going to be the name of my memoir.
Just tell 3 friends.
No, my life memoir is going to be tell more.
Tell more.
And if for some reason you want to wear our face or something like that, check out our store. I mentioned it earlier, but you can purchase t-shirts, you can purchase mugs. If for some reason you are still listening to this and it's during the COVID-19 pandemic, then, which is this Sunday, then there just is a slight delay in terms of ordering stuff. It usually might take about a month or so to ship. We'll still take your money, but it just might be a little longer before you get your product. If you're listening to this and it's after the COVID-19 pandemic, congratulations, you've made it. And also, hopefully this issue is no longer an issue. Am I missing anything?
No, and we'll update the website once we get back to normal shipping times. So if you go to the website and it doesn't have a big disclaimer that says it's going to take a little while, then you should be able to be confident that it will arrive not within 25 to 30 days, but within maybe 5 to 7 days, which is, I believe, our standard shipping time.
Yes. Yep.
So there's that. I think that's it. I think you covered everything there.
One more thing I just want to remind everyone. We'll probably be plugging this for the most part up until the actual time, but in November, we're going to be hosting a 24-hour live stream for Extra Life. Extra Life is a charity. We're going to be raising money for children's hospitals, and it's going to be a good time. We might have a couple of guests joining us for the stream. We're coordinating everything, and hopefully we'll get a kind of early itinerary out.
Yes, so we are part of the Extra Life website, so you can look up Classic Gaming Brothers on the Extra Life website. We will also probably dedicate a portion of our website to the Extra Life itinerary to kind of list out what games we're playing during what time. It's not going to be a hard and fast itinerary, but it will be kind of like what we are planning on. If you have a suggestion for a game that you want us to see us play specifically, send us the game recommendation and a time that you want to watch us in, and we will put it in the itinerary. And as we build it out, we'll let you know if the time slot's available or not. Currently, the whole 24-hour period time is available. But if you really want to watch us play, for example, Crusader Kings 3 at 3 in the morning, well, by all means, just send it on over, because it'll be out by then. Or Dark Sun 2, Wake of the Ravager. So anyway, I think that's going to be it.
I think so too.
Do you have anything else left to say?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother. I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
What did we even talk about this episode? Oh, MMORPGs. That's right.
Yeah, but there isn't anything to do that's funny about MMORPGs.
Oh, I was gonna say.
There's tons of funny things about MMORPGs.
Yeah, I know. I can tell you a story about something in regards to it, but it's already at the end of the podcast, so nobody's listening.